Hey there. So I want to kind of continue talking a little bit about cheating. Okay. I had started this conversation earlier. The sun is getting in my eyes now. Okay, so I'm talking to the ladies specifically. And I want to pose a question to you. Do you attract cheaters? And I'm posing this question to you because I talked about in my last video, basically how not to get cheated on is, you have to look at the caliber of man that you are attracting into your life. And then you have to be honest with yourself and reflect on why you are attracting that type of man, whether it is good or bad, it doesn't matter, right? But I'm talking specifically about, I have had friends and people who are, people who have told me that they've dated consistent, repeated cheaters, men that cheat on them, right? Now, not every relationship and every marriage will at some point go through the fire, okay, be put to the test and whatnot. And that's not what I'm talking about here, because the good relationships, the great relationships, the long-standing relationships will pass those tests and will still be together, okay? So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, young ladies, women who, consistently date different men and they're always cheating on them. They're always, they feel like that all men, you'll hear women who will say all men are dogs, all men cheat, all men, whatever. And, they call those women scorn women, angry women or whatever, because they've been hurt. Okay. So, and this does go both ways. I do know that men actually do deal with this stuff as well. I know that. I've heard that from men. So it does go both ways. But I'm a woman, so I'm just kind of like talking from my perspective, right? Anyway, I bring this up because when I say, you have to, okay, so how do you do that? How do you find a man, basically, who is not a cheater? Like, how do you know? Well, you don't know. You don't know, right? But this is what dating is for. Dating is for the purpose of vetting, okay? Vetting the other person, giving them time to show what they're about, giving them time to show themselves, to show who they are, to see how do they show up for you in your life. How do they react and respond in different circumstances? And sometimes you can know somebody for 10 years or more, whatever, even live with them, and you're still tricked. You can still be tricked. So what I'm saying is lowering your chances of being with a cheater is what we're talking about. Like, basically, how can you do that? First of all, prayer. I mean, if you're a prayerful woman or if you're a godly woman, pray. Pray. But after that, or besides that, or whatever, in general, if you're always attracting cheaters or cheating type men, or men who are always not satisfied with one woman, okay, it's probably something, meaning you're the common denominator in all these relationships. So it might be time to look in the mirror and have a true reflection and talk with yourself and with God, right? To figure out why you're attracting these types of men. Typically, it's going to have something to do with your childhood. Typically, it's going to have something to do with maybe the example that you saw your father or parental figure show. So if you had that type of father that was a rolling stone, he was in and out the house, or it was a known fact that he was cheating, or he just gave off those airs of not really being in love with your mother, or if you saw your mother, maybe you didn't have two parents in the household, and maybe you only saw your mom go in and out with different men and they always cheated on her. Different things like that. okay, in your childhood is going to create an imprint on you as a youth. It's going to create an imprint in your mind and in your memory as to what to look for in a man, or at least what feels comfortable for you, what feels like home to you, because it's what you saw. Okay, so let's say, for example, your mom, maybe she was a single mom or something, and she always, she did have men, or she went out with men, but they were flashy dashy, or they were very good looking, they were very debonair, like they were smooth talkers, right? But they weren't always there. They didn't always show up for her or whatnot, right? But this is what you saw. You might be left with the imprint or with the thought that this is just how men are. And all men are this way. Smooth talkers, show up whenever they want something or whatever, and in and out or whatever, but we have to do our own thing or whatever, right? So basically, you will kind of lean towards attracting that type of a man because it feels comfortable to you. Unless or until you come to a place in your life where you decide to, hold up, I want to specifically attract something different. Sometimes you need to know that there are different type of men out there. Sometimes it takes you seeing other families or other people or just other men in general who actually do show up differently in relationships for you to know consciously that you don't want to attract maybe that type of a man, right? Also, maybe you are naive or just very nice, open-hearted in general, and you've maybe been taken advantage of. Okay, that's another reason. That could easily happen when you just lack knowledge, right? Naivete. Okay, I've been guilty of that for sure. Because, I didn't come by that. So, I'm a woman of my word, and, I just assume other people are just like me, and they just basically, what you see is what you get. And that's not true. Anyway, I've come to learn that as I got older, right? But in general, usually what you were presented with as a child in your childhood is what you are going to kind of gravitate to. Now, the other thing is, let's say you had the kind of father who was, maybe he was there, maybe he was present in the home physically, but he was not emotionally attached to your mother. Or if he was an emotionally detached type of a man, okay, or you were always lacking emotion from him, or you always felt like there wasn't enough time or attention or whatever from your father, right? What a lot of people don't realize, I think people realize that now, but unless you know these things, or you've run across this information, or you've just seeked out this type of information, a lot of times you don't realize you will naturally seek to fill in the gaps or the holes in your heart, or whatever that you grew up with. Your greatest need that you didn't get in your childhood is what you will tend to seek out in a partner. And this is absolutely psychological. This is absolutely a known psychological fact. You can look this up. And so whatever that greatest need is, I'm going to give you an example. This was so unconscious. Well, maybe I won't give you this example. But this is from a friend. It was somebody else, a close friend of mine. So I won't give that example. Anyway, you will tend to fill needs that you didn't get as a child, right? So depending on what you got as a child, it's going to depend on what your greatest need is. And so, for example, if your father was that way, right, and you're always trying to get his attention, you're always trying to get his attention, you might unconsciously run into somebody who reminds you of your father, or mother for that matter, okay, whichever one is your greatest need or whatever, and you will be seeking to get attention and love and fulfillment from that person because you were lacking it the most growing up. Okay, so these things happen so unconsciously, right? It happens until you run into a brick wall, and until you realize that person, you're never going to get your needs met from this person because that person is an avoidant, and your father was an avoidant or whatever, and they go out and cheat or whatever, right? And so if you don't know how to consciously look for a man who has strong character, okay? So first of all, you want to look in the mirror and look at yourself and think about yourself. Do you have strong character? Okay. Like, I'm going to give you an example. I don't smoke. I never have smoked. I've never smoked a day in my life. I didn't smoke when I was in high school. There was no peer pressure that could make me smoke. I didn't want to smoke. I didn't like the idea of smoking. I didn't want, my lungs turning black or whatever, right? So I had strong character and a willpower to say no to drugs, no to smoking, right? In school. Then as I got older even, and you're in situations where other people around you are smoking, hookah, whatever, okay, I could be right up in there and still not smoke. Why? Because it ain't my thing. And my character, that is part of my character, who I am, and I can't be pushed on the matter. If I wanted to, I would, right? But now I'm old enough. Like, now I'm just older, and nobody really fights me on that, right? But this is part of my character of who I am. So I have strength to say no. Right? I had to develop that strong character, right? So a person that has strong character is what you're looking for, really. So when a man prides himself on being an upstanding man, when he prides himself, and he prides himself on his family and how he takes care of his family, he prides himself on how he speaks and what he, either what he does as a living or what he does in his community, or how he shows up in relationships, and a lot of times you can kind of get clues that this might be that type of a person. He might be a good kind of person when he has exes and people that don't want to let him go, right? When you're in a relationship and somebody doesn't want to let you go, there's a reason why they don't want to let you go. Because they're getting their needs met from you, from the person that they don't want to let you go. So it's like the person who is trying to leave the relationship is because they're usually more than not getting their needs met, but they might also be like drowning, suffocating, dying, whatever, and that person is sacrificing too much of themselves or whatever, right? But the person who is getting all their needs met, they're the one that don't want to let you go, because they're like, no, wait, don't go. I need to still suck your blood. Okay. Like eventually they do let go, whatever. But when people have exes or past relationships and basically they don't want to let them go, or they would take them back or whatever, it's because they got, for the most part, not always, this is not 100%, but a lot of times you can see that it's because those past people, they enjoy the company of that person, right? Like that person probably took good care of them, right? So when somebody has a pridefulness about themselves, and they are an upstanding person, they are, they can stand on 10 toes down on the way that they show up in relationships. Like, okay, this is who I am, this is what I do, or whatever, and they have good character. They're not liars. They don't just lie little white lies, or lie for any little thing or whatever. If they say that they're going to come and be there and show up for you at 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock or 7 o'clock, whatever, they're going to be there. It might be there 5 minutes early. Like they have strong character, right? It's like you can tell that the person takes pride in who they are and how they show up in life, how they show up at their job, their reputation, or not so much that they're overly concerned about their reputation, because, you can't please everybody. Some people are going to like you, some people are going to hate you. It doesn't, but they are the type of people who will say things like their word is their bond, right? It's like if they say they're going to do something, they're going to do it. Okay, they're going to follow through. Also, a man that doesn't rush into decisions. He doesn't rush into following what the crowd is doing, or be rushed and pushed into making bad decisions, rash decisions, a man that is slow to his decisions and he has thought about them himself, right? Like, and he may say something like this. He may say something like, okay, thank you for bringing that point up, or let me get back to you. Let me think on this for a minute, a day or two, and I'm going to get back to you on this. This is something my dad did. My dad did this all the time. And he would say, let me get back to you on this. Let me think about this. Let me pray about this, or whatever. He's going to meditate, whatever. And then he's going to get back to you on this, right? That's the kind of man who is going to take time to reflect or whatever, right? He has character. That's a man that has character. Now, there is nothing that's going to foolproof anybody because the devil is always around, right? There are some things, though, that are going to lessen the chances of you, attracting a cheater. It's when you are knowing what to look for, right? And when you are on purpose about who you are allowing yourself to spend time with and fall in love with. Okay. So when you're on purpose and you are thoughtful and you're not spreading your energy all around, right? Or your body. Okay. And you don't get addicted or attached emotionally, physically to a man or whatever, right? You can see him more clearly for who he is, how he presents himself in your life. This is how you should operate. And this is how I was raised to operate. Now, there are times that you do meet that person, somebody or whatever, and it's just too hot and heavy in there, right? And that's very hard. But usually that's when you're younger. Usually that's when that type of stuff happens. Like, when you're in high school or whatever, or when you are younger, more youthful, right? But the older you get, hopefully you acquire more wisdom and more how do I want to say this? Wisdom. I think wisdom is the word. Maybe I want to say you are more slow to take time to look at the person for who they are, right? And allow God and listen when God speaks to you. Or if you're not, if you don't believe in God or whatever, maybe you're not sure, right? But your body will tell you. Your body will tell you. You will know how you feel based on your energy flow. Your body will tell you. You will feel better when you're around that person or worse. Like, you will know when that person leaves, does your energy miss them? Do you miss them? And what do they bring out in you? Do they bring out the best in you? Do they bring out the fun in you? Do they bring out the maturity in you? Do they bring out the child in you? Like, do they bring the joy in you? Like, how do you feel around that person, right? Because maybe you don't attract necessarily cheaters. Maybe you attract good men. And I have to say that I attract good men. I've definitely attract good men. Now, I am not, or I have not been compatible with all the good men that I have attracted. I am not for everybody, and they are not for me. And that is more or less the lesson that I'm on. Also, I think it is very true that, like for me, you might attract that one that may or may not be so good, but you learn from it. So, and probably overall, he was a decent guy, right? So that's my average story, is that I definitely attract good men. I attract decent men. But that's also because, I don't know, I've always sniffed out players from the beginning. I mean, and I say sniffed them out. I never had any real cheat code or anything, but I just felt like they were shifty-eyed, or they were spreading their attention too thin, or whatever. I wasn't center of their attention, or center of their life, or whatever. And it was like, okay, they have to go. because it's just not going to work out for me, right? So I don't know. But I also, because I saw my dad treat my mom very well. I saw my dad, you know, I saw my mom was the center of my dad's world. So I saw that growing up. So of course I want that. You know, I mean, I don't know. So you see how your upbringing and your childhood has a lot to do with who you attract. Okay. Now I did type this in because I wanted to see specifically what, you know, like the actual verbiage of what I'm trying to say. Now, I didn't read it like I never do, but I did type it in, so at least I have it ready to go. So I'm just going to read it through like I usually do, okay? Because again, this is information. See, now when I say now, I mean like obviously since the invention of the internet, the World Wide Web, right? Things that used to be like hard knowledge to get, that you had to go buy a book or go sit on a couch or just experience, right? Now we can literally just type it in. So there's no reason these days to not be knowledgeable, right, about whatever it is, right? This is why I'm always doing this, because we can just get some good info. Doesn't mean it's 100%, doesn't mean everything is always right, but at least, you know, you can get some pretty good info these days, right? Okay, so I typed in, why do I attract cheaters, right? So as if I always attract cheaters, I wanted to go down this list, okay? So I'm going to see what it says, what AI says. It's understandable to wonder why you keep attracting cheaters, but remember, you are not responsible for the actions of others. Good point. Focus on building healthy relationships with people who share your values and trust your instincts, paying attention to red flags. So I'm always talking about red flags, okay? Now here's a deeper look at why you might find yourself in this situation. Number 1, unmet needs and unresolved issues. Exactly. Okay? So sometimes people cheat because they feel needs aren't being met in their primary relationship, whether it's emotional, physical, or relational. Unresolved past traumas. Unresolved trauma or past hurts can lead to the subconscious expectation of unhealthy relationship patterns, potentially attracting individuals who will trigger these issues. Okay. Definitely take time to heal things that you need to heal. This is what this means. Take time for self-reflection so that, for example, let's just say if you're a man and you have always dated women who took advantage of you, who took your money and took advantage of you, right? Or this happened to you one time in particular and it really hurt you. And now if you don't take time to heal, when you go into that next relationship, okay, you're going to think automatically that she's going to do the same thing. And she's probably not. I mean, you don't know until you allow her a chance to prove herself, right? But by you assuming you're going to do this, you're going to hurt me, you're going to cheat on me, or you're going to steal my money, or you're going to, or whatever, right? It's because you have unresolved issues. It's because you haven't taken time to heal from the last relationship so that you can show up whole, healthy, and happy, right? Okay, so this is what this means. Unresolved past trauma. That's huge. Okay, low self-esteem. Individuals with a low self-esteem might subconsciously attract partners who are not loyal, trustworthy, potentially reinforcing negative self-perceptions. Absolutely. When you have a low self-esteem yourself, you don't love yourself, you don't take care of yourself appropriately, right? You may attract a man who looks for a woman who he knows he can take advantage of. He's looking for a woman who has a lower self-esteem, one that he can, potentially control, not just mentally or verbally, but like really control her, like try to be controlling to her, try to be mean, or maybe even hit her, whatever, like a controlling type of man, right? He's going to know when he is attracting a certain type of woman, he's going to know, like, it's like a controlling man who knows he wants to control everything about her, right? He's looking for a certain type of woman who he knows and feels that she's going to let him do that. Now, there is a difference between when I say control, because I feel like I have felt controlled, right? But like, let's say, for example, in my second marriage, he would tell me he felt controlled. We both felt controlled, right? But it was in different ways, totally different ways. Okay. And so, like I said, me and him are actually fine. As friends, good friends, it's relationship wise. But there is a difference, right? Sometimes people feel controlled by one particular action, right, that another person feels loved by. That's not what I'm talking about. So for example, if I am in a relationship with a man and I'm like, here, take your vitamins, and I'm reminding him to take his vitamins, take your vitamins, or don't forget to take your lunch, or do this. One man might feel like that's too much mothering, and he doesn't like that. He feels controlled. That's micromanaging. Another man loves it. He might be the baby of the family, and he loves it, and he likes that. He feels that that's loving and smothering and mothering and nurturing, and he loves it, right? That's two different men. What, the same type of action, but controlling to one and loving to another. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not control that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the type of man who wants to absolutely control your time, your energy, your life, your goals, your wants, your desires. He's just controlling about everything. How much money he, likely that type of man doesn't want you to work. He is going to control how much money you have, maybe how much gas you put in the car, how much gas you use. Is going to control things, like especially financial things. I can't stand that. Like, I can't deal with that. Like, no, I can't. I don't attract that type of control. I don't attract. That won't work with me. We won't even last one date. Okay, but that's not what I'm talking about. But that's what they're talking about here. They're talking about, with low self-esteem, you might attract that type of a man, that type of a controlling man who is potentially reinforcing your own negative self-talk or your own negative self-view of yourself. So, example, he might say things to you like, if he speaks down on you, he's demeaning. He says things like, you're stupid, or he might call you names, whatever, when he's angry or whatever, but just demeaning. How men will go off and you hear them, I mean, you hear it in some rap songs, they call you this, that, they'll call you every name in the book, right? Okay. And that's what he thinks of you. And if you put up with that, he's only doing that because you're putting up with it, because you're allowing it. Okay. But you're allowing it. Why are you allowing it? Okay. Why are you allowing that? Why are you allowing that? It's because you have low self-esteem. And so then the next logical question is, where did that low self-esteem come from? How did you get low self-esteem? Likely it started in your childhood. Likely it started either in your childhood, or it got slowly eroded or ripped. Slowly it got chipped at in relationships or whatever. And so the next thing you know, you don't feel like you are even valuable enough or worth better treatment. Okay? All right, so it says relationship dynamics. I'm still reading. Unhealthy patterns. You might be repeating unhealthy relationship patterns learned from previous experiences, unknowingly attracting individuals who fit those patterns. That's what it is saying. You can read that. Okay. So I'm just reading it. Lack of communication. Poor communication within a relationship can lead to misunderstandings and unmet needs, potentially creating an environment where cheating feels like an easy way out. Okay, so this kind of speaks to what I talked about in my last video when I was talking about, you might have somebody with all good intention and he may go a couple of years or whatever trying to communicate his needs to you. Maybe he's doing a good job of that, maybe he's not. But if he, let's say, for example, I'm just going to give you a classic example. If your man says that he would like adult time together 3 times a week, okay, and you only want to give him that adult time 1 time a week, or sometimes barely that, whenever you want, or it's convenient or whatever, right? Leaving him to deal with his situation, okay? And in your mind, you're thinking, well, he just needs to get his situation under control. And you are thinking, because maybe we are married or together or committed or whatever, that he's just a cheater, right? Because maybe he's gone, maybe he, in his mind, and he's not looking for that. He is trying to not think about that, right? But you are not fulfilling, even for him, what are considered to be his basic needs, right? So he is left with a need that's not met, And now when temptation, he might not even be really looking for it, but when temptation now falls on his lap, okay, and he easily goes for that, it's because he was left open, right? Because his needs were unmet. Okay, and it's mainly because maybe you were not being realistic with what he needed. Now, I'm going to speak very frank with you women, anybody who's watching me, okay? The advice my grandmother gave me on my wedding day, and I always share this with my clients and women when I'm doing makeup or whatever, right? And I remember her saying, keep his belly full and his wee empty. She was Italian. This was her marriage advice. I mean, she was right. I mean, basic. On a very, very basic level, that's what most men want. Okay? But when it comes to keeping him taken care of, right? You have to have a frank and open, honest talk with your significant other. You have to ask him. Ideally, how many times would you like that activity? Preferably, you do that before you even get married, and this is during the dating, vetting process, right? Because if he answers 3 times a week, and to you that's too much, then right there, you're going into a relationship where you're already going to not be able to meet his needs, or not even want to, or it's going to feel like a burden to you, okay? But if he says, you know, or maybe he answers you every day, okay? Again, how are you going to look at that? Now, keep in mind, every man is different. Every man is different. Okay, so I'm talking to ladies specifically here, like being very frank. Every man is different. But every man is the same, especially when they're born, as men. Every single day, their testosterone rises. In the morning, it's usually at its peak, right? And if you have boys, you know this because you can see their situation when they're little. They have a situation in the morning, right? And so when a man is still full of a lot of testosterone and he's still very youthful or whatever, and some men just never really decrease. It just depends on their health and their lifestyle, right? But a healthy man is going to have testosterone and he's going to have a situation, okay? Now, maybe he may tell you about this or he may not. It just depends. But the fact is, it's going to be there. Most men, especially that are healthy, are going to say every day. Most men are going to say every day. That's just keeping it real. Some men have a higher testosterone level and they may need more than that. They may need more than that. And so there are times, ladies, that you are fulfilling a man's needs, and that is what you're doing. You are making sure that that man is not being left all the way open for some other woman to come in and take care of his needs. Okay? Because if you have done that for him before he went off to work or whatever, what are the chances that he's going to even be able to perform and act if he has already been drained? I'm just keeping it real. Okay? Just keeping it real. And I'm sharing this because this is a real biological, physical need that men have. Women are different. Women have desires or whatever, and some women do have, higher desires than other whatever. But for the most part, most women need to be more aroused. Okay, men don't need that. They just wake up with their testosterone levels up high, and now they have a situation. And they're not looking necessarily, especially the younger they are, they're not necessarily looking to emotionally connect with you. Now, in my first marriage or whatever, and I was younger, my husband was younger and all that kind of, remember, I was with him very young or whatever. In the morning, you may be more or less taking care of a situation, but when he gets home from work and you guys are both home and you're relaxing and everything, it may be more of a aroused situation and a more of a romantic, emotional connection. That's more maybe for you. Okay? And he may be able to last longer because he needs more. He's already been taken care of in the morning. He needs more time to build back up. Okay, so you may be more, happier with that second go round, right? Because of it being, not so much pressure built up. Okay? I think these things to me are just common sense, but apparently they're not, because I do hear a lot from women's mouths, literally, as we're talking, especially women who have actually never been married, right? Or I've heard just in general from men's mouths or whatever, just hearing men talk and stuff, that they will marry somebody and they go in with it with one thing in mind, and then they get something else after they get married. She doesn't want to take care of him no more or whatever, and then they wonder why he goes out and cheats. And that's a physical cheating, right? He may or may not actually have an emotional connection with anybody that he has decided to do that. He may still be emotionally connected to you, right? But he's feeling, for whatever reason, you're too busy for him, you don't want him, you don't desire him, you don't like him, it's not important to you or whatever. And so in his mind, he's, thinking, well, I'm committed to you because I'm still here, I'm paying your bills, or I'm paying for the house, or I'm putting food on the table. So I'm committed to you. In his mind, he thinks he's committed because he's still showing up every single day. But if you knew about those other activities where he feels like this is just, and other men, you'll hear men say this. You'll hear men say, well, he's just being a man. He's just AKA taking care of his needs. What are those needs? He needs to be released. Okay? I'm talking to you woman to woman. He needs to be released. Usually daily. Not every man though. So this is where you want to be open with your communication with your partner, your husband, or whoever, right? As to what his needs are. So that you can be there to fulfill those needs. If you want to. If you don't want to, that is not what I'm talking about. Okay? I'm talking about specifically keeping your man happy, especially once you are wifed up. Okay? And, about not, these are the simple things, some men are just cheaters and they are just going to cheat. Even if you take care of him, especially if he does have an unusually high drive. Okay? There are some men, you're just not going to be able to make them happy. And that's what you need to look out for, because those men, you're just not going to be able to make them happy. It'll never be enough. Nobody. Okay? So those are the ones you don't want to attract. But when you are, let's say, and if you want to be wifed up, if you want to be wifed up and get a husband or whatever, you do need to understand that these are just part of what are basic, bottom line, basic needs of a man in a relationship. Now, unless you go into a relationship where he tells you something different, maybe there are physical constraints, maybe you're at that age or whatever, where that is not an issue or that is not his thing. He's going to say that. He's going to say, I don't have that particular situation every day or whatever, but I like to cuddle, or I like to do this, or I like to do that, whatever, right? Whatever the case is. But what I'm saying is that the point is to have open communication. Okay, that's the point. The point is to have open communication, clear communication, and do not berate him or make him feel bad if he says to you every single day. If anything, hallelujah, praise God. That means his body is functioning properly, to be honest with you. Be thankful that the man has testosterone and he ain't acting like no female, okay? Like he, whatever. He ain't deprived and all that kind of stuff. He's not trying to be female, whatever, okay? So, be thankful, right? But don't expect, if you know that this is, if he answers you that way, then also don't be scared to say to him, yo, you okay? Do you need some help with that? Checking to make sure that his situation is under control, because that's what it is. That's what it is. But understand, he's going to look to you for that need, but it will, with the right woman, bond you to him. It will. Most men do look at that as I'm talking about in a relationship in long term, and I'm talking about in a long term relationship, monogamous and all of that, as he doesn't want you just doing a duty either, but that is something he will attach himself to you. He will feel more attached to you. He will. Especially when he knows that you care about his physical needs. He will be thankful for that. Really, he'll be thankful for that. Okay? Now, this is just frank talk that I'm saying. Frank talk. Frank. Outside of why you might be attracting a cheater, right? Or maybe you might attract a good man or whatever, but then he has cheated on you, and maybe you haven't had that frank conversation with him as to why that happened. Maybe you're just holding resentment. And sometimes I've heard of this situation happening too, where a man does cheat and the woman finds out, she holds resentment, and she gets even worse and doesn't want to give it to him even more. Okay, and now you've made his situation even a worse situation. Okay, because you're holding on to each other for whatever reason, whatever. You're holding on to pain or anger. And at this point, maybe you don't even like him no more. You don't even want him, whatever. And he's over here like, well, we got these kids together, whatever. I'm just doing. Oh, it becomes terrible. To me, that is a horrible type of relationship. That's horrible to me. To me, that's prison. To me, that is a prison. I don't want to be in it. I don't like that situation. I'd rather be open and honest and frank about what I can do, what you can do, what we need to do, and we're gonna work this out or not. Release each other, right? That's just how I am. That's how I am. But I'm keeping it real with you because I have heard situations plenty of times with men who are just like, I love her, I'm attracted to her, I like her, I want her, but she only wants to do it, once a week or whenever she can be coerced or whenever he can tie her down. Okay? And you might be dealing with someone who doesn't really love you, or she's not attracted to you romantically. She might not be attracted to you physically or whatever. And if that's the case, then you need to look in the mirror and see why. Is your belly too big? Is your gut too big? Maybe she don't want to be underneath you. Maybe she's suffocating. Maybe she doesn't want to do it with you. Okay? So, it may be a two-way street. Man, I'm talking to the men now. If she doesn't want to do it with you, ask yourself why. Why? Maybe your performance is not what it needs to be. Maybe she's not being satisfied or being happy or whatever. And most men understand a lot of times that they know, like, when women cheat, it's usually emotional, right? A lot of times. Not always. For sure, not always. But men take it so personal. I have literally seen this with my own eyes as far as like men talking and everything and just how personal they take it. Okay? And they think, a lot of times they'll say, I'm not performing right or whatever. They know. Okay. All of this talk is just real talk, relationship talk, real talk. Now again, if you are attracting a man of high caliber who prides himself on his commitment and his loyalty, he is going to go to great lengths to not step outside of the marriage or of the relationship, okay? And he's going to communicate with you. And if you are the kind of woman who is also of high caliber and also prides herself on being a good woman, a wifely woman, whatever, and you care about his needs, you're going to try to meet his needs. And so if he's saying to you, I'm no longer visually stimulated because of XYZ, that doesn't mean go out and just, like, he's probably not telling you to go out and buy this and buy fake this and fake that, fake hair. Because most men that I know don't actually want that either. Most men that I know, most real men, everyday men, I'm not talking about, like, men like to look visually sometimes, like, on TV or on whatever, at this type of a body or whatever, but in real life, a lot of men want natural. Most men that I know, they want more of a natural look, a natural woman. For example, I had one man who told me he liked the way my hair smelled, right? Because I wash my hair and I do use shampoo and things that smell really good, right? On purpose, because I know that your hair will smell good. My dad used to say that about my mom. He used to love the way my mom's hair smelled, right? But I had a man who said that, he liked the way that my hair smelled because he also liked that he wasn't smelling tracks, old glue. Okay, so you have to be, you know, if your man says to you, if he's honest with you and he comes out and he admits that he doesn't like the way your hair smells or something, like it turns him off or something, you have to not jump down his throat and make him feel bad for admitting to you his truth, right? But try to adjust whatever you got going on, if you can, so that he is not feeling turned off, okay, by a smell or something. Okay, so anyway, this is just real talk that I wanted to kind of get out there. I think it's good sometimes when we talk about these things, because sometimes in relationships people have a hard time admitting things or being truthful, right? But if they hear somebody else talk about it or say it, they might share this video with their wife or with their husband or whatever, and it's like, look, see, I'm not the only one who feels this way, right? And so it kind of helps. It kind of can help to open up the conversation and the communication between both parties, right? Okay, anyway, I hope this helps. Bye.